just wanted to preface this video by saying that I'm going to split my wrap up into two parts because I have close to an hour's worth of footage, either over or under. So that's obviously gonna transform into a very long video. So you guys are gonna get two wrap ups. I read 14 books, so in this video that you're watching, I'm going to talk about 7 of those books. I don't know, enjoy the video. I'm so hot, even though I'm wearing a dress. Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about the books that I recently read. Now, if you don't know, I basically do, or the style of wrap-ups I do is just, talk about recent reads and whatever. Nothing more specific than that. But because I saw how much I was reading in July, I thought I would just wait till the end of July so I could do a technical July wrap-up, even though I'm going to be talking about one book, which I read in June. This is basically a July wrap-up. I have a lot of books to talk about, so let's get into the video. I don't think I have anything else to say. Do I? To start off with, stats. I read 2 fantasies, 1 horror, 1 contemporary, 2 historical fictions, 2 just fictions, 3 classics, 2 non-fictions, and 1 graphic novel. I read 5 middle grades, 6 adult books, that's like technically books that are adult books, and then 3 YA books. I had a total of 3,431 pages for the books I'm going to be talking about, and then I gave 0 1 stars, 0 2 stars. In the category from 3 to 4 stars, I gave that to 6 books, and in the category from 4 to 5 stars, 7 stars, and I gave 1 book a 5-star. And I think that's all I want to tell you for stats. I usually forget if I want to say anything else for stats, but I think that should be good for now. Getting into the video, I hate wearing headbands. Oh my god, they're so annoying. I feel like very trapped right now in my own hair. Let's move on to the books I actually read. Let's talk about the one book I read at the end of June that I didn't talk about in my previous wrap-up. I have Pet. This one I listened to on audiobook and I gave a 4.75 stars. I absolutely loved this one. I mean, as soon as I finished it, I wanted to reread it because of how much I loved it. So I do plan on purchasing the book in the future. Maybe not the near future, maybe I'll just like re-listen to the audiobook because I really love the audiobook as well. I forgot who the narrator was, but the narrator did like a really excellent job narrating the audiobook. So I definitely recommend the audiobook if you haven't read it yet. It was fairly fast-paced. It's a very short book. I think it's like 200 and something pages, but yeah, it's a fairly short book, so it's a fairly short audiobook, especially when you're listening to it on double speed. I thought the writing style was very beautiful. I really like the author's writing style. I think that's the attraction of the book to me, and I definitely want to check out more of their books because of just how much I love the writing. It really transforms the scene and made it a very artistic feeling setting as opposed to just like a normal city that they were in. I absolutely adored the characters. I loved the main character, I loved the best friends, and I even felt like the side characters, they were so like talked about that in a way that made you feel like they were more than just side characters, because usually sometimes I see that side characters are kind of like one-dimensional and they're not really relevant in a way that makes them more than just a stepping stone in the story. But I really did enjoy all of the side characters, and especially the main cast of characters. You have the main character, I forgot her name. How did I forget her name? I am so sorry, I forgot her name. I'm really bad at remembering names and characters, but obviously then you have the best friend, and then you have Pet, who is the monster. And I thought this book had a very unexpected outcome. I didn't know what the direction was, but I enjoyed getting there, and I very much think it has a really good message. Actually, this is one of my favorite messages, that whole like who's the monster, who's the man kind of message that some things typically have. That's not like directly the message, but I really enjoy that kind of basis. That was 4.75 stars, and I read that one at the end of June. Starting off with books I read for July, I finished my reread of Asylum by Madeleine Roux. I decided that I would read this one for the PopCulture Readathon. I forgot what prompt this one was for, so sorry. I'll put it in the video though. I didn't get bingo or anything like that, by the way. I kind of failed the PopCulture Readathon But it's okay though. Read this one originally in 2016 and I really enjoyed it. Then I reread it now and it wasn't as enjoyable. I do want to say though, my reread of this originally started last year in May. I know. I ended up reading like 3/4 of it and then I just put it down for some reason and then I picked it up this summer, which is really strange. It was just, I was kind of looking at it more through a critical eye. I don't know why. That's kind of how I read. My rating system, well, I'll talk about my rating system if you want me to in like a how I annotate and rate kind of video, but like my rating system is very influenced by enjoyment because I've always just kind of done that. But when I used to do that exclusively, back then I used to give a lot of 4 stars and a lot of 5 stars, but now I do have that kind of critical eye, so I see myself giving a lot of books between 3 and 5 stars, or more like 4.75 stars. And so I read this one a little bit more critically. I did have a couple issues with it. One of them being the writing of one of the side characters, or he's part of the main cast of characters, but Jordan. Now Jordan is Dan's, that's his name, is Dan's best friend, one of his best friends that he meets. He becomes a part of the trio, and this video is going to be really long, I already know. Right off the bat, it doesn't go great for the introduction. He does that whole thing that like straight people think what gay people do. Like they used to think, at least like back in like the 10s or whatever. He basically was like, oh hi, I'm Jordan and I'm gay by the way. And I was like, I mean cool. Maybe she just kind of wants to like preface that because each of the characters do have a personal struggle, and Jordan's personal struggle is him getting his parents to accept that he is gay and him being at this preparatory academy because he's not even supposed to be there in the first place. Jordan, okay, so I don't know if Madeleine just didn't know how to write a gay character, but basically being gay became his whole personality. Now, like I just explained, that was kind of, you know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it. He was very one-dimensional, and like Madeleine Roux kind of, she didn't stereotype. I think she at least didn't do that. She didn't do the whole white gay stereotype thing, but she just kind of made that his personality, and I was kind of annoyed by that because like when he actually did start developing into an actual person, kind of just felt, I don't know, it felt really strange and weird because I didn't recognize him. It like went from one extreme to the other because that kind of like digresses into my next issue. There's a lot of unresolved stuff that I'm not sure is going to be talked about in the rest of the series because this is the first book in a series. One of them being that when Jordan starts to develop into an actual person, like Madeleine starts writing him to be more than a gay straight white man. What did I just say? I meant to say like a cis white gay man, you know. There's this scene, this is not really a spoiler out of context, it just sounds weird, but Jordan basically was mad at Dan randomly, which came out of nowhere, and Dan went into his room and there was just all this mumbo jumbo around his room. It was a really strange situation, and then Jordan caught him and Dan in his room, and he got really mad, like really angry, and kicked Dan out of his room. And then 20 pages later, everybody was friends again, and Dan didn't even care that he just literally got thrown out of... It was strange. They didn't... I don't know if... because it didn't get... Spoiler alert, it didn't get addressed later in the book. This book, that kind of is like a main problem I have with this book. First books typically are setups for the rest of the series, but I don't like when that's the main point of the book. Like this book obviously has its main story, which is where Dan goes to this preparatory academy and he meets these people, but like they have to live in the old asylum because their current dorms are being renovated, and all of this strange stuff starts to happen and Dan starts to think he's crazy. But like that wasn't really the main focus. Like that was the main story, but they didn't really focus on that. They were like, there's all these subplots that were kind of just being introduced every other chapter that were like not getting resolved. So I want to see all of that like obviously be resolved in the rest of the series. I do like the way she wrote it though. Even though I read this book before, I was still very confused on what was happening. I was like, did Dan actually do this, or is this blah blah blah, or this and this and that? Like, I actually did feel like I was going insane with Dan. It is fairly slow paced. Like I said, it's a lot of setup, so you kind of just read new things over and over again, and nothing really happens until like the last half of the book. And the characters' flaws are put forward to you, but usually I have to like work on this, but I usually can't get past when it's like not quickly getting resolved, these characters' flaws, because oh my god, it's so hot. Whoa, okay, sorry. It's just really hot. Oh yeah, did I mention that I read 14 books? I don't think I said that. I read 14 books. They're very, very unlikable characters. Do not like Dan. I do not like Abby. I do not like Jordan. I'm not even invested in this relationship between Abby and Dan. I feel like it's going to be really bad. But I ended up giving this one 3.75 stars despite all the negative things I just said. I do really enjoy the concept, and I really think I'm going to like the second book. I think the second book is kind of circus themed. Also, did I mention that this book has pictures? It's much in the style of Miss Peregrine's, but this one obviously came before Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Pictures in books wasn't really new, but this one has a pictures of real life mental institution, like photographs from the 50s and stuff. Wow, I talked about that for a long time. Then I read Ivy Aberdeen's Letters to the World. This one I really enjoyed. When I initially finished it, I thought it was like just a really okay book. Like, it really didn't do anything for me, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, wow. This was my first read for the Detectathon. At the beginning, I wasn't really a big fan of the writing style for like the first maybe 50 pages-ish. I listened to it, by the way, so I'm just going to assume it was like the first 50 pages. Maybe like the first like hour I was listening to it, hour and a half-ish. It kind of felt very old writing. Like, there's a lot of adjective verb descriptions, and usually when it gets too descriptive like that, I'm like, it kind of like takes away from the story for me. But eventually it did get better, and I did really actually enjoy the last kind of part of the writing. Absolutely adored the characters. I thought everybody developed nicely. I really loved Ivy. She was just a very adorable character. I thought the writing style was well enough to make me literally hate her family. Like, I felt like the same emotions as Ivy because of the way she would just talk about stuff and the way that like scenes were set up. I was like, Jesus, like her family cannot get a hand. I don't know if that's just because like I'm stubborn. Like, I would not be as forgiving as Ivy was, but like obviously it's a middle grade, so there has to be some wholesome content. I thought it was fairly paced. It was like medium paced. I did get kind of bored at some scenes though, because you had like all this stuff happening and Ivy very much talking about her sexual identity discovery and whatnot. There were just some scenes that I was like, yeah, this is kind of like irrelevant and stuff, because Ashley was handling 3 different plots at once. You have the family plot, you have her sexual discovery plot, and you have the missing notebook, which is obviously the main premise that this book is promoting. Although I will say that it doesn't really focus on that premise that much. That premise very much is important for the rest of the story to happen, but I like how it didn't become the main part. Like, it was a mystery, like it became a mystery of like who this was. Like, you obviously, Ivy didn't care. You kind of see that later in the book. Ivy really didn't care who had it anymore. She was just needed somebody to talk to, and therefore I felt like I just didn't care who had the notebook at like that point in the book. It was also super easy to follow, and there wasn't any unnecessary homophobia. When you just add unnecessary homophobia into the story, it really internalizes that. So there wasn't any unnecessary homophobia, which was really lovely. There obviously was the discussion of that, but that was from the perspective of a side character talking about their experience being a lesbian, and I thought that was nice because obviously Ivy needs to know that that's going to happen. There's also that kind of thing, I mean, if you read the book you know, but like that kind of subplot that was really nice. Overall, I thought it was a really well written story. I think it was very cute. I liked, mainly because of how I think about relationships in books nowadays. I don't really want to get into it right now because then I have to explain my feelings and stuff, but like, I don't I like how the story ended with the whole relationship. I opened the door because it was super hot. Beginning into the next book I read, after reading that one, I read Fablehaven, or I reread, I should say, Fablehaven. I originally read this one, I don't remember actually when I originally read this one, but when I originally read it again, I really did enjoy it. Let me just get to my notes, because I have wrap-up notes, which is super cute. I just always have to put down my thoughts after I read a book, but it's really helpful for the wrap-up. How do I want to... What do you guys like? I could do this. But I really enjoyed it. I ended up like giving it, what, a 4 stars when I read it. Although the second time I read it, I did find myself like dreading to get through it. I thought it was a very slow book. Nothing happens. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you that. Nothing happens for 3/4 of the book. It's basically them discovering that Fablehaven exists. Like, that's the only thing that happens. Oh, and Seth being a literal idiot. Like, I feel really bad, and I mean really bad saying this, but I did not like Seth. And you know why I hate saying that? Because he's a little child. He's like 9 years old, and obviously children are destructive. But it's obvious that Brandon wrote him to be just an kind of disastrous character to set up the plot to the point. Basically, this book would not exist, or the story of this book would not exist if Seth didn't mess up. Just saying, you know. So I'm definitely going to anticipate for the rest of the series, because this is a series, Seth's growth. I thought the dialogue was too try-hard. If it transformed actual writing into like dialogue, like blah 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 blah, and like oh my god, or whatever, it's like it's kind of weird dialogue sometimes. What I did like about this in comparison to Asylum as a first book though is that this one very much is its own story, because there is a couple plot setup points for the rest of the series obviously, but if you didn't care about that, you could literally just read this book because it very much does have its own kind of story, even though all of that story really happens in the last 3/4 of the book. And I think that's how you properly write a first book. You have a couple plot point setups, right? And then for the rest of the series you just kind of for the rest of the book you kind of just do your own thing. Oh geez, it is really hot. The only person who really showed growth in this book is Kendra, who is the other main character, and I thought that was really lovely. They're both extremes, by the way. Seth is a very destructive, kind of doesn't care and will do whatever he wants little boy, and Kendra is a very follow by the rules, and if she does anything outside of that she will literally give herself a heart attack. But you could already see her in this book kind of loosening up a bit, which I thought was very lovely. She had to you know. But I thought it was a fairly quick resolution for a very large issue. I see this in a lot of books I read, so I really don't point it out anymore because I just assume that's the thing. Like, oh, you have this very extreme issue that in real life would take you maybe a few hours, more than a few hours to solve, but it gets solved in a few hours in these books, which is fine, I guess. The only reason I liked this book is because it has a very redeeming ending. I like the writing at the ending. I like the dialogue, and I like the resolution. Even though it was a quick resolution, I did like it. And this does have an info dump when you get introduced to a new character, of kind of like the history of stuff, or a couple of characters, and just generally the history of Fablehaven. Actually, there's 2 info dumps, which I don't really like. I like slowly getting my information, but you know, it happens. Oh my god, let me read you this line. Her almond eyes were black as coffee, and her features suggested a hint of Asian ancestry. Short and slightly stooped, she retained an exotic beauty. I really look forward to continuing the series and mainly seeing the character development, and I gave this one a 3.5. Where did I put my books? Oh my god, I would be so mad if I didn't press the record button. Bum, 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 bum. For the... Gotta scoot over again. For the Detectathon, I continued on with Red at the Bone. I listened to this one on audiobook, and I absolutely love this one. This one's by Jacqueline Wilson, and I very much do like Jacqueline Wilson's writing. It was very beautiful, and it was that writing that kind of like, you know, it's very descriptive, very nice and poetic in nature, and it very much nicely transitions into other sections because this book does deal with a lot of things. By the way, if you guys didn't know, I always put books mentioned in my description boxes, and I list the books I obviously mentioned in the video, but I also put trigger warnings and a list to the website which tells you about trigger warnings, but I do it for you guys in the description box. So if you want to check that out, what the trigger warnings are for this, I want to get it exactly right. So I'll put them down in the description down below. But yeah, this is just warning you, this book has a lot of trigger warnings because it does deal with a lot of heavy topics. It is written from different perspectives, which I didn't realize because I don't think in the audiobook they really say that, so you kind of have to just figure it out. But I really did love the different perspectives and the way that everybody was dealing with this, because basically this book is about, what is this book about? Well, it starts off with this young girl and this party she's going to have, and her mother's kind of just explaining to her about life, and her mother kind of gets sent back, not literally, but like the book takes you back to when her mother had met her lover, her boyfriend, and all that happens with that, because that was a big situation. And within that story, it's about the joining of these two families from different social circles and kind of all that they deal with individually as families, but also how the members of the family react to the teenage pregnancy, because the mother does end up getting pregnant. And I just thought it was a very lovely story told. Well, it's lovely in like the writing way. Obviously it is very sad though. I absolutely adored all the characters. I loved the audiobook. It was a multicast audiobook, which was really nice because that was the only way I could differentiate who the characters were. And I thought the author handled all the topics very well, and I got so emotional towards the end. There's this one scene that just hit. There's just one scene that just hit really hard for me. It wasn't the ending scene, but that hit harder than the ending. And when the ending came and told you like kind of all that happened as a conclusion, it was like, like I wish I cried, because for some reason I can't. I don't know, my brain just stops me from crying when it comes to books, but like it was a super emotional read, and I definitely recommend you read it and listen to it. I don't know which one I would prefer to tell you to. I did like the audiobook, but it's fairly short, so you'll definitely quickly read it. That one I gave that one a 4.5 stars. Then after that, for the Detectathon, I read Mad Miss Mimic. I read Mad Miss Mimic. This one is a very strange book, not in the sense of the story. The story is just it's a nice average story. Oh, it's hot again. Ooh. Tonight. Boom. This one's about this girl. I wish I could tell you what this book's about. Do not read the back of this book. It's very confusing. This book follows this girl. What's her name? I forgot what her name was. Leo, I think her name is. And she basically has this particular stutter that the author did a lot of research on, which was really nice. She did a lot of research actually on everything that happens in this book. She mentions all of it in the back of the author's note, but she has this particular stutter where, as a product of it, she can perfectly mimic other people's voices. And I didn't know what the extent of the perfect mimic went to until one of the ending scenes where somebody literally got confused her mimic for somebody else, you know, the person she was mimicking. Like they literally thought it was them. So I was like, that's cool. Obviously it's Victorian London though, so nobody actually enjoys it. And I'm sure she doesn't either, because all she wants to do is find her own voice. That's ultimately what this book is about, her wanting to find her own voice, and she does find it through the events of this book. And she has to like get married, obviously Victorian London, hello, and she is in high society. And she has a sister. Her sister is so annoying. She got what she deserved, okay? I'm just going to say that. There's this new guy she meets, he's like really rich. I don't know, there's a lot that happens. And I really like this story the more I think about it. But at the time when I read it, I was like, what did I just read? It felt like a literal fever dream. I was very confused. There was like so much happening, like I said, in this book. And yet there was also nothing happening. I did feel it to be very slow at sometimes. But it kind of, for the most part, transitioned from one thing to the other. Like one thing would happen, there would be like a little bit of breathing time. And then the next thing would immediately happen. And I think the reason it felt like a fever dream was because of that, and there was like no time for emotional recovery. You kind of just had to like get over it quickly and move on to the next thing. I thought this one was very realistic in its conclusion too. It's very much set in modern day. There's no like backstory to anybody's life. Well, it kind of does give you backstory to some of the characters, but like only in a minimum of maybe 10 pages total for like all the characters. But for the most part, this is set in modern day, which I thought is also why it felt very strange, because it just felt like an episode of a show. Like, it was just poof, it was gone, like it was done. So I gave this one a 4 stars, and I thought that this one has a really pretty cover, don't you think? Look how pretty it is. I read Ghost Boys. I listened to this one. It was a fairly quick audiobook. It was very quick. How long was it? I think it was only like 5 hours. This one's more of a very informative kind of fiction story. It's about this boy who unfortunately dies from gunshot wounds in a situation he had with a cop, which obviously was unjust. And it's him watching everything unfold in the aftermath as a ghost, and he kind of follows the trial and the repercussions or the lack. Just gonna tell you the lack of repercussions the cop faces for killing him. And I thought it was pretty cool. In this book comes an unexpected friendship, which I thought was nice. It's kind of strange when I think about it. It's a very quick book to read. It's only 214 pages. Also have a lot of trigger warnings that I'll list down below in the description box. But like I said, it was very informative. It talks about one of the first cases of police brutality and a couple others as well. So I think because for this one being a middle grade, I really enjoyed the writing style and how the information was presented to the reader, because this one is intentionally supposed to be, you know, for elementary school kids or maybe middle school kids. And I think it was a very nice way of introducing police brutality, but you know, it's always good to be educated. I gave this one a 3.5 stars.